Good evening. This is Dwan at Mid Valley Fellowship, and just wanted to check in for our kind of inside Mid Valley Fellowship and what it looks like on Tuesday nights. And so last week we didn't really do a video for you. We just sent you a little clip of worship time, which is an important part of the evening. We start out every evening with a time of worship. And then actually last week our topic was overcoming fear. Fear is something that's certainly significant for so many people. I know in my own journey that was a significant topic of really navigating that. What does it look like to engage with God in the midst of fear and to step into difficult things? And so we talked about that last week and really walked with the participants through some of those things, and they had a chance to dig into it during the week, the previous week. But this week we have a few different topics that we're hitting. We do have our different programs, and so different ones are doing different things. So in Clean Heart Year 1, they're talking about secrecy and isolation, how there's this tendency that when we're struggling with things, or whether an addiction or something else, that we have a tendency to want to keep secrets and to isolate from people, when in reality, relationship and community is really helpful for us and is part of the healing process and really part of having a healthy life. And so we're talking about that tonight in Clean Heart Year 1. And then in Hope Together Year 1, there's the question, is he healing? And that really looking at what are some of the things that you can look at as a spouse to kind of go, okay, is my husband really on the healing journey? Is he engaging with things the way that he needs to? And sometimes it's not the things that they would suspect. Sometimes there are things that we wouldn't look at to say, oh, that's progress. And so this kind of helps really look at like, okay, what are the actual things besides just stopping a behavior? What does actually walking and healing look like? What are the things that are important in that? So that's always a challenging but valuable lesson to go through. In Taking Back Ground, for men and women who are struggling with unwanted same-sex desires, talking about redemption, like what does it look like to walk in God's redemption of our lives? And so they're going to be digging into that. In Mending the Soul, I'm going to be talking about shame. We're actually going to talk about this week and next week, and really the difference between toxic shame and legitimate shame. Really quickly, legitimate shame is, when we do something, when we sin, we do something wrong, there's a sense of conviction that we feel, and that's really intended to draw us back to the cross, to draw us back to Christ, and for us to confess that and have restored relationship with Him. Toxic shame is quite the opposite. Toxic shame has this sense of like there's something wrong with me intrinsically that can't be changed, and that I sort of just have to live in that place of shame, and shame just sort of like builds on itself and doesn't take us to any healthy or helpful places, and really comes from the enemy as a way to separate us from other people in relationship, separate us from God, and separate us from things that are healthy for us. So we're talking about that in Mending the Soul, which is for survivors of sexual abuse. Because for survivors of sexual abuse, that's sort of the dynamic of the abuse experience, is that there often is shame in it, and there's this sense that the one who was the survivor tends to carry the shame, to carry the weight and responsibility in a lot of ways for things that were not their responsibility. And so talking through deciphering those pieces of what is my responsibility and what's not, and how do I really have a healthy perspective about it, because shame will sort of show up in all kinds of unexpected ways. So you're talking about that. And then in Clean Heart Year 2, they're talking about it's called Helping Your Wife. And really like what are helpful things as you're struggling and navigating through addiction? What are some helpful things that you can have in your relationship with your wife that will help her to sort of understand maybe a little bit of what's going on, and also help create a sense of safety in that place of where there's been violation and wounding in the past from the addict's actions? And so what does it look like to help walk alongside your wife in a healthy way, to help her as she's navigating things? And then in Hope Together Year 2, which is for spouses as well, is called New Dance Moves. And so really talking about this idea of that, okay, so you work through, because they're sort of later in their process, but you're working through all these different pieces and understanding addiction, and you're really understanding your own issues and brokenness and how that contributes to the dynamic of the relationship. And so this topic is called New Dance Moves. What does it look like as a couple to sort of dance together there's a fly here, to dance together, this is live, to dance together and to sort of navigate through the challenges of life, right? As a couple, as a team, working together in a way that God intended that marriage relationship to be. Because really that marriage relationship is intended to reflect God's heart for the church and that deep love that He has for us. So what does it look like to reflect that in the context of marriage? So anyway, so those are some of the things that we're going to be digging into tonight. As you can probably gather from what I've said, there's some challenging topics in there, some encouraging pieces too, and some really just difficult stuff to navigate. And so we feel privileged to walk alongside people navigating through these different topics, and we have a great team that really sits with people and walks them through difficult things. And so we look forward to this evening and what God's going to do. And as always, we really value your prayers. There is a spiritual battle for sure that's going on. The enemy wants nothing more than to keep people stuck in their brokenness and their shame, wants their marriages to fall apart, wants there to be separation from God, from other people, from community, all of that. That's the enemy's strategy. And so you can pray against that tonight as we're talking about these topics that are about community, connection, teamwork, walking in healthy ways and not sort of living in shame. You can pray against those lies that the enemy wants to bring, and that the participants would see that, would understand it, and be able to walk in the truth of God's design for their life, for their relationships. And so anyway, so we value your prayers, but that's a little window into this evening, and we will catch you next week. Thanks.